In a distant galaxy where powerful empires ruled the stars, there were those who didn't fit in. The outcasts. They were the aliens who had been cast out from their home worlds, rejected by the very people they had once lived with. The leaders of the galaxy's empires saw them as threats, their differences too great to accept. These exiles had no choice but to wander through the cold expanse of space, searching for somewhere to belong. The group of exiles was small but diverse. Among them were Creel, a tall and muscular being from the planet Zinthar, who had the ability to control the wind, but lacked the social skills that made his people famous. Then there was Vina, a slender, delicate-looking alien from the planet Philo, who had a sharp mind, but no physical strength. Zomak, a four-armed creature from the planet. Raxer was known for his strength and bravery, but had a temper that often got him into trouble. And lastly, there was Lyra, a quiet and thoughtful alien from the water world of Arion. She had the gift of telepathy, a talent that helped her communicate with others without speaking a word. The exiles had traveled through the galaxy for many years, avoiding the patrols of the Empire's ships. They had barely survived, drifting through uncharted space, their hopes fading with each passing day. But now, after years of searching, they had finally found something. A planet called Earth. At first, they didn't know what to make of it. Earth was unlike any world they had ever seen. The atmosphere was thick with oxygen, the gravity heavier than most planets, and the climate varied in ways they couldn't predict. But Earth had one thing that none of the other planets in the galaxy had: a chance for survival. "Maybe this is the place," Creel said as he looked out at the planet from the cockpit of their small ship. "Maybe Earth will take us in." Vina, who had been staring at the planet's blue oceans, raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? We don't even know what kind of species live here. We might not be welcome." "We have no choice," Zomak said, his voice low and serious. "We can't go on running forever. If this is the only place left for us, we'll have to risk it." Lyra remained silent, her eyes closed as she reached out with her telepathy. She could feel the vibrations of the planet, the life that pulsed within it. There was something strong here, something alive and thriving. It made her feel a glimmer of hope. "We'll land in a remote area, far from any human cities," Lyra said, opening her eyes. "We can figure things out from there." The exiles agreed, and the ship slowly descended into Earth's atmosphere. The process was slow and delicate, as they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. Their ship wasn't designed for a soft landing, but they managed to touch down in a dense forest far from human civilization. The forest was quiet, save for the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. As the exiles stepped out of the ship, they were greeted by the earthy smell of soil and the sight of towering trees. It was beautiful, but it was also alien to them. They had never seen anything like it before. Creel stretched his limbs, feeling the weight of Earth's gravity. "It's heavier than I thought," he said, grinning. "But it's nothing I can't handle." Vina stepped forward, scanning the area. "We need to stay low," she warned. "We don't know if there are any humans nearby. If they see us, they might try to hurt us." "We won't hurt anyone," Zomak said firmly, though there was an edge to his voice. "We just need help." Lyra nodded, her thoughts drifting toward the strange new world they had found. There was something about Earth that seemed different, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. She had sensed it the moment they entered its atmosphere. The group spent the next few days exploring the forest, keeping their distance from any human settlements. They learned quickly that the planet's wildlife was unlike anything they had encountered before. Giant creatures roamed the skies, and smaller ones scurried through the underbrush. It was a world full of life, but the exiles soon realized that they would need more than just survival skills to make it here. The food was strange, the water tasted different, and the air, though breathable, was thicker than they were used to. Still, they managed to adapt, using their intelligence and resourcefulness to create shelter and find food. They lived quietly, hoping that no one would find them. But as the days passed, the exiles began to notice something strange. They could feel the planet's pulse, the heartbeat of Earth, It was strong, almost overwhelming. They began to wonder if this planet was as alive as it seemed. Creel, always the most optimistic of the group, was the first to bring up the idea of contacting the humans. "We need to know if they'll accept us," he said. "We can't keep hiding forever." Zomak was more cautious. "You're right," he said. "But if we reveal ourselves too soon, they might see us as enemies. We need to be careful." Lyra and Vina agreed. They needed to understand Earth better before they made any decisions. And so, they spent the following weeks observing the humans from afar, watching them from the shadows as they went about their daily lives. The humans were strange to them. Some were tall, some short. Some had dark skin, others light. But no matter their differences, the exiles noticed one thing that stood out. Humans had a strong sense of community. They helped one another, and they fought for what they believed in. That was something the exiles had never experienced among their own people. As they continued to watch, they began to realize that Earth might be more than just a place to hide. It might be the place they had been searching for all along, a place where they could finally find acceptance. The exiles weren't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear. They had found a new home. They just had to figure out how to earn the trust of the humans who lived here. The exiles spent several weeks in the forest, learning about Earth and its strange, vibrant life. They gathered resources, built shelters, and adapted to the planet's environment. Despite their best efforts to stay hidden, they knew it wouldn't last forever. Soon they would have to make a choice, stay hidden or try to reach out to the humans. Creel was the first to suggest they try to make contact. "We can't keep running forever," he said one evening as they sat around a fire. "We need to know if the humans are willing to help us. We can't survive like this forever." Zomak, always the more cautious one, raised an eyebrow. "We don't know what the humans will think of us. If we reveal ourselves too soon, they might think we're enemies. What if they try to attack us?" "I agree with Zomak," Bina said softly, her sharp eyes scanning the dark forest around them. "We don't know anything about their weapons or how they will react to us. We should be careful." Lyra, who had been silent until now, closed her eyes and reached out with her telepathy. She had been sensing something strange about Earth. There was a unique energy here, something that felt alive in a way none of them had ever experienced before. It was like the planet itself was waiting for something. "I believe the humans might be different," she said, "but we need to approach them with caution." Creel nodded. "We'll take it slow, but we can't stay hidden forever. It's time we meet them." The next morning, the exiles decided to venture closer to a human settlement. They chose a small town, far from the cities they had observed from a distance. The exiles had learned that the towns were less populated and more likely to be understanding of strangers. At least that's what they hoped. As they traveled through the dense forest, they encountered their first human signs: strange structures built from wood and metal, roads that twisted and turned, and vehicles that sped along the ground. The alien exiles were cautious, staying in the shadows, watching from a distance. They were still unsure how to approach the humans, but they knew this was their only chance. After several days of observing, they finally saw a group of humans walking along the road. They were a family, 2 adults, a man and a woman, and 2 children. The exiles studied them quietly, noticing how the humans interacted with one another. The family appeared to be peaceful, calm, and kind, but the exiles couldn't be sure. They had no idea how the humans would react to beings like them. "We should approach them carefully," Lyra suggested, using her telepathic abilities to communicate with the others. "We can't just walk up to them, they'll be afraid." "I agree," Vina replied. "We need to speak to them, but in a way that doesn't threaten them." Creel, eager to make contact, was already stepping forward. "Let's try." The Awam exiles moved out of the shadows and onto the road, cautiously approaching the humans. As they got closer, the family stopped in their tracks. The woman gasped, her eyes widening as she stared at the aliens. The children clung to their parents' legs, looking frightened. For a moment, no one spoke. The exiles stood still, unsure of how to proceed. Then, to their surprise, the man spoke. Who are you?" he asked. his voice shaky but not filled with fear. It was a question full of curiosity, not hostility. We are travelers, Creel said, stepping forward and trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. We mean you no harm. The man looked at the others, his eyes scanning each of the exiles. Travelers? Where do you come from? We come from far away, Lyra said softly, using her telepathic link to help communicate the message. We're not from this world. We've been lost for a long time. The woman, still holding her children close, looked at the aliens with a mixture of awe and concern. You're not from here? She asked, her voice trembling. What are you? We are different, Zomak said, his voice deep and strong. We're not like your people, but we seek help. We have nowhere else to go. The man took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for something on his waist. But instead of drawing a weapon, he seemed to be unsure of what to do. The silence hung heavy in the air. It felt like the world had stopped for a moment as both sides assessed each other. We don't want to hurt anyone, Creel added quickly, sensing the tension. We just need to survive. Please, we're not here to cause harm. The woman's expression softened and she placed a hand on her husband's arm. It's okay, she said quietly. They're not attacking us. They just look different. The children, still frightened, peeked out from behind their mother. Are they friendly? The young boy asked, his voice small and innocent. They are, the man said, his voice filled with uncertainty. He turned back to the exiles. I don't know what you are, but I believe you're not here to hurt us. You're lost, aren't you? Yes, Lyra replied, her voice calm. We're lost and we need your help. We've come from far away and we don't know where else to go. For a long moment, the man looked at the exiles. His face was filled with concern but also compassion. Finally, he nodded slowly. You can come with us, he said. But you'll have to come quietly. We'll take you to the town. We'll get you help. Creel, Vina, Zomak, and Lyra exchanged glances, a wave of relief washing over them. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the first step toward finding a new home, a place where they could belong. As the family led the exiles through the forest, they couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Earth, it seemed, might just be the place they had been searching for. The exiles followed the family through the forest and into the town, their steps heavy with both hope and caution. They had no idea what awaited them in this new place, but the possibility of help, of finally finding a place where they could belong, kept them moving forward. The forest, once their shelter, faded behind them as they entered the human settlement. The town was small but bustling, with people going about their daily lives. The buildings were made of stone and wood, sturdy and practical, with signs of life everywhere. Children running through the streets, people chatting in small groups, and the scent of food drifting through the air. It was a peaceful place, nothing like the harsh worlds the exiles had left behind. As they walked through the town, the humans they passed stopped and stared at them. The exiles could feel their eyes on them, some filled with curiosity, others with fear. The exiles knew they were different. They could sense the humans' unease, their uncertainty about what to make of these strange, otherworldly visitors. The family led them to a modest house at the edge of town. Inside, the air smelled of fresh bread and herbs, and the warmth of a fire crackled in the hearth. It felt welcoming. The man, who introduced himself as Mark, motioned for the exiles to sit at the large wooden table. Make yourselves comfortable, Mark said, his voice kind but still uncertain. We'll get you some food, and then we'll talk. The exiles hesitated at first but sat down slowly, still unsure of how to behave. This was their first real interaction with humans, and they didn't want to make any mistakes. Vina, the sharpest of the group, studied the room carefully. She observed the simple comforts of home, wooden chairs, a warm fire, and the smell of food, and couldn't help but wonder if the humans truly understood the danger they were inviting into their lives. Lyra, ever the thoughtful one, reached out with her telepathic abilities, sensing the emotions of the family. She could feel the concern, but also a sense of openness, a willingness to help. It was different from the cold distrust they had faced from their own people, and it made her feel, for the first time in a long while, like they had found a place where they might truly be able to adapt. Mark's wife, Sarah, soon entered the room with a tray of food. She set it down in front of the exiles, her eyes lingering on them for a moment before she turned to her husband. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she whispered, not wanting to upset the visitors. "We don't know who they are or where they come from." "I know," Mark replied softly. "But they're not here to hurt us. They need help, Sarah, and we can't turn our backs on them." The conversation was quiet, but the exiles could still hear it. They had been trained to listen for subtle sounds, and though they didn't understand all of the words, they could sense the hesitation in Sarah's voice. She was scared, but Mark's calmness seemed to reassure her. Sarah took a deep breath and turned to the exiles. "We don't know what you've been through," she said, her voice gentle. "But you're safe here. You can stay as long as you need." Creel, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Thank you," he said. "We don't want to cause any trouble. We just need a place to stay, a place where we can survive." The exiles hadn't had a proper meal in days, and the food that Sarah had prepared was like nothing they had ever tasted before. It was simple, but it filled them with a warmth they hadn't felt in so long. As they ate, they began to talk more, openly, with Mark and Sarah sharing their stories of the galaxy they had left behind. The conversation, though difficult at times, was a step toward understanding. The humans listened carefully, trying to understand the exiles' strange ways. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. As the evening went on, the exiles began to notice something else. The humans were just like them in many ways. They too had struggles. They too had dreams, and they too understood the importance of family. It was a connection the exiles had never expected to find, but it made them realize that perhaps this place could be the home they had been searching for all along. The days that followed were not easy. The exiles were still adjusting to Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Their bodies, though capable of surviving in many environments, were struggling to adapt to the differences of Earth. The weight of the planet's gravity felt like a constant pressure on their limbs. And the air, though breathable, was thicker than what they were used to. Vina was the first to fall ill. Her body, frail to begin with, couldn't handle the strain of Earth's environment. She grew weak, and for the first time in a long while, the exiles felt fear. They had been through so much, but now they faced a challenge they couldn't easily overcome. Mark and Sarah were quick to offer help. "We have a doctor in town," Mark said, his voice filled with concern. "She might be able to help you." But Vina was reluctant. "I'm fine," she insisted weakly. "It's just the gravity, I'll adjust." Sarah looked at her with sympathy. "It's not just the gravity," she said. "You need medical help. Please let us help you." After much convincing, the exiles agreed to go to the town's doctor. It was a difficult journey, but they knew they couldn't ignore their health. The doctor, an older woman named Dr. Jensen, examined Vina carefully and confirmed what they had feared. Vina's body was struggling to adapt to Earth's environment. "You'll be okay," Dr. Jensen said, giving them a reassuring smile. "But you'll need to rest for a while. Your bodies need time to adjust." The exiles were relieved, but they also realized something important. Earth wasn't just a place of refuge. It was a place that required them to adapt, to change, and that would take time. But with the help of the humans around them, they began to see that survival was possible. As the days turned into weeks, the exiles grew stronger. They learned how to navigate the town, how to communicate better with the humans, and how to adapt to Earth's unique challenges. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but they had found something they hadn't expected, a community that accepted them, that helped them, and that made them feel like they had finally found a place where they belonged. For the first time in a long while, the exiles dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had found their new home. Life on Earth for the exiles had started to feel like a new beginning. They were adapting to the planet's environment, learning from the humans, and growing stronger each day. The quiet town where they had found shelter had become their refuge, and the humans had shown them nothing but kindness. Mark, Sarah, and their children had helped the exiles adjust, offering support and understanding. For the first time in a long while, the exiles felt a sense of peace, but that peace was about to be shattered. One evening, as the exiles sat together in the warmth of the fire, Creel's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he stiffened. He had always been the most alert, the one most sensitive to the dangers of their past. Something felt wrong. He stood up abruptly, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon he had kept hidden since their arrival on Earth. "What is it?" Zomak asked, sensing Creel's sudden tension. Creel's gaze fixed on the sky. "There's something out there, something big." Lyra, always attuned to the emotions and energy around her, closed her eyes and reached out with her telepathic abilities. She could feel it now. A dark presence, a disturbance in the air, something unfamiliar and ominous. "Not just something," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with concern. "There's a threat. It's coming this way." The others stood up quickly, their bodies instinctively going into defensive positions. They had survived many battles in the past, but they had hoped that Earth would offer them peace. The exiles had been running for so long, they hadn't expected a new danger to come knocking at their door. Mark and Sarah, who had been in the kitchen preparing food, came rushing in. They could see the alarm on the exiles' faces and knew something was wrong. "What's happening?" Mark asked, his voice tense. "What is it?" "We don't know yet," Creel said, his eyes still fixed on the sky. "But something is coming, and it's not friendly." "Should we run?" Sarah asked, her face pale with worry. "No," Creel said firmly. "We won't run. We need to stay here and we need to be ready." The exiles and the humans quickly moved into action, preparing the house and the area around it for what was coming. Sarah and Mark helped as much as they could, though they were unfamiliar with the skills needed to defend themselves. The exiles, however, knew what needed to be done. They reinforced the doors and windows and took positions around the house, each of them watching different angles, ready for whatever might approach. As the night wore on, the tension grew. The sound of distant engines hummed in the air, faint at first but growing louder with each passing moment. The exiles' worst fears were beginning to take shape. Zomak, ever the warrior, gritted his teeth. "They're getting closer," he muttered. "I've heard those engines before. They're not from this planet." Lyra's telepathy reached out further, trying to feel the intentions of the approaching threat. She could sense the cold, ruthless energy of a military force, but she could also feel something more, a desire for conquest. The presence was terrifying, a force that had no intention of asking for permission. "They're here," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with dread. The ground began to shake as a large shadow appeared in the sky. The exiles stepped outside, looking up at the massive spacecraft descending toward Earth. It was sleek and menacing, a stark contrast to the peaceful world they had hoped to call home. The ship landed just outside the town, sending up a cloud of dust as its engines powered down. The humans, though frightened, looked to the exiles for guidance. Mark, Sarah, and their children huddled together, trying to stay calm. "We have to go now," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "What if they're here to attack us?" "They're not here for you," Creel said quickly. "They're here for us." Mark turned to him. "Who are they? What do they want?" "They are the ones who cast us out," Zomak growled, his voice filled with anger. "The ones who exiled us. They want us back." The exiles knew their past had caught up with them. The empire that had rejected them was relentless, and they were coming to take them back by force. Earth had become their home, but it was about to be dragged into the conflict they had tried so hard to escape. "We won't let them take us," Creel said, his voice filled with determination. "This is our new home now, and we'll fight to protect it." The exiles didn't waste any time. They quickly moved to the front of the house, ready to face the impending threat. Mark and Sarah, though terrified, stood behind them, unsure of what they could do to help. As the large doors of the alien ship opened, a group of soldiers stepped out, their weapons ready. They were tall, armored, and imposing, Nothing like the humans the exiles had grown used to. These were the soldiers of the Empire, ruthless and unforgiving. They had come to reclaim the exiles, and they wouldn't leave without them. The leader of the soldiers, a tall figure with glowing red eyes, stepped forward. "You are not welcome here," he said, his voice cold and threatening. "You belong to us. Return with us or face the consequences." Creel stepped forward, standing tall and defiant. "We belong to no one but ourselves. We've chosen this world, and we will protect it." The alien soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, Zomak charged forward, his forearms swinging in powerful, coordinated movements. He tackled the nearest soldier to the ground, knocking the weapon out of his hands. The exiles fought back with everything they had, using their skills and knowledge of combat to hold their ground. Mark and Sarah, though unarmed, stood in the doorway, watching in disbelief. The battle was happening right in front of them. They had never imagined something like this. But in that moment, they knew the exiles were not just visitors. They were protectors. The fight was fierce, but the exiles were relentless. They had fought for their survival in the past, and now they would do it again. But as they clashed with the soldiers, they realized something important. They weren't alone. Earth had become their home, and the humans were ready to stand with them. "We will not let them take you," Mark said, stepping forward with a makeshift weapon in his hand, a large piece of wood he had grabbed in desperation. "We're with you." The exiles exchanged glances. In this moment, they weren't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for Earth, the planet that had taken them in when no one else would. The battle raged on, the sounds of clashing metal and alien weapons filling the air. Creel, Zomak, and the other exiles fought with everything they had. Their movements were swift and powerful, each strike carefully aimed, each defense calculated. They had been through countless battles before, but this was different. They weren't fighting for their survival alone anymore. They were fighting for Earth, for the humans who had shown them kindness and welcomed them into their home. The soldiers from the Empire were fierce, but the exiles were determined. The air crackled with energy as the two sides clashed, sparks flying from weapons as they collided. The humans, though unarmed and inexperienced, watched from the sidelines, their faces filled with a mix of fear and awe. They had never seen such a battle before, but they knew they had to do something. They couldn't just stand by and watch. Mark, who had never been in a fight before, grabbed a heavy piece of wood and ran toward the soldiers. His heart was pounding in his chest, his mind racing. He had never been a warrior, but something inside him had changed. The exiles had given them so much, and now it was time for him to give something back. With a grunt, Mark swung the wood at the nearest soldier, knocking him off balance. The soldier stumbled but quickly regained his footing. "You shouldn't be here," the soldier growled, his weapon raised. But Mark wasn't afraid. He swung again, this time hitting the soldier square in the chest. The soldier grunted and fell to the ground, his weapon clattering away. For a moment, the exiles paused, surprised by Mark's sudden bravery. They had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. It wasn't just about weapons or power. It was about courage, about standing up when everything seemed hopeless. Zomak, who had been locked in a fierce struggle with another soldier, turned to see Mark standing tall, holding the piece of wood like a weapon. A grin spread across his face. "Human bravery," he muttered to himself. "Not so different from our own." Creel, seeing the tide of the battle shift in their favor, shouted, "Push forward! We need to end this now!" The exiles fought harder, their confidence growing as they saw the humans stand beside them. Even Sarah, who had been terrified just moments ago, picked up a heavy rock and threw it at a soldier, knocking him off his feet. The soldiers, clearly surprised by the humans' sudden resistance, started to lose their composure. The humans weren't backing down. They were fighting alongside the exiles, proving that they could stand strong, even against an overwhelming force. With each passing minute, the Empire's soldiers began to falter. The exiles had the advantage of experience, but It was the human strength of will that truly made the difference. Together, they were unstoppable. "Don't let up," Creel yelled, his voice filled with determination. "We can drive them back." The battle continued, but the exiles and humans were winning. Slowly, the Empire's soldiers began to retreat, realizing that they were not going to be able to take the exiles back without a fight. And they weren't going to win. The humans' courage had turned the tide, and the exiles were able to press their advantage. It wasn't just the exiles who had fought well. The humans had shown their strength too. Mark and Sarah, along with their children, had fought fiercely, even though they were not soldiers. They had stood by the exiles, protecting their new home from those who sought to destroy it. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting, the Empire's soldiers turned and fled, retreating into their ship. The dust settled, and the exiles and humans stood together victorious. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and dust, but there was a sense of relief in the air. They had done it. They had defended their home, together. As the last of the soldiers disappeared into their ship, Creel turned to the humans, his face showing respect. "You fought well," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I didn't expect this from your people, but you showed us something important today." Mark, still holding the piece of wood, nodded. "We're all in this together now," he said simply. Zomak stepped forward, his forearms folding across his chest. "You humans have more strength in your hearts than we gave you credit for," he said with a grin. "I think we can learn a lot from you." Sarah, still trying to catch her breath, smiled. "I think you've taught us something too. We're stronger than we thought." The exiles and humans stood in silence for a moment, looking at one another. They had fought side by side, and now they were bound together by the battle they had just faced. It was a moment of unity, a moment where two different species had come together to protect something greater than themselves. As the dust began to settle and the sun dipped low in the sky, Creel spoke again. "This is just the beginning. The Empire will be back. They won't give up so easily." "We'll be ready," Mark said, his voice steady. "We'll protect our home. We won't let them take you or us." The exiles nodded. They knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire had been pushed back for now, but they would return. But the exiles no longer feared the future. With the humans at their side, they knew they could face whatever came next. And so the exiles and humans stood together, their backs to one another, ready to defend the new home they had found. They were no longer just a group of outcasts. They were a family united by their strength, their courage, and their willingness to fight for each other. For the first time in a long while, the exiles felt hope. They had found a new beginning, a place where they belonged. And with the strength of humanity by their side, they knew they could face whatever the future held. The battle was over. The invaders had retreated, leaving behind only the dust of the conflict and the scars of the fight. The exiles and humans stood together in the aftermath, their breaths heavy, but their spirits unbroken. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the town, but in that moment, the future seemed brighter than ever before. Creel, Zomak, and the others had fought side by side with the humans, and now they felt a deep bond between them. They had once been strangers to this world, but Earth had given them something they had longed for: acceptance, a chance to rebuild, a chance to belong. Mark, still holding the piece of wood he had used as a weapon, looked around at the exiles and the humans who had fought with them. He couldn't believe what they had just accomplished. They had faced down an army of alien soldiers, and together they had won. It was a victory that would be remembered not just by the exiles but by the humans too. "You did it," Creel said, his voice full of gratitude. "You stood with us, fought with us. You've earned our respect." Mark nodded, a sense of pride filling his chest. "We couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You've taught us how to fight, how to stand together. This is a new beginning for all of us." The exiles looked at the humans, their faces softening. They had always known strength, but it had never been so clear before. Earth had shown them that courage didn't come from weapons or power alone. It came from the heart, from the will to protect what you loved. Sarah stepped forward, her hands still shaking from the fight. She had never imagined she would be part of such a battle, but now she felt something she hadn't expected, a sense of belonging. "We've all lost something," she said quietly, looking at the exiles. "But we've also gained something." "We've gained each other." Zomak nodded, his forearms folding across his chest. "You humans are more than we gave you credit for," he said, his voice deep with admiration. "There's strength in your hearts that no weapon can match." Lyra, who had been silent for most of the battle, looked out at the sky. The stars were starting to appear, the same stars that had guided the exiles through the darkness of space. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace. "We've found more than just a place to live," she said softly. "We've found a home." The exiles had been lost for so long, drifting from one world to another, never truly finding a place where they could belong. But now, Earth had become that place. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but it was a place where they could rebuild, where they could start anew. As the days passed, the exiles and the humans worked together to repair the town, clearing away the remnants of the battle and rebuilding what had been destroyed. The humans showed the exiles how to work with the land, how to farm, how to live in harmony with Earth's rhythms. The exiles in turn taught the humans how to defend themselves, how to be strong in the face of danger. The town, once a quiet, peaceful place, became a symbol of what could be achieved when different worlds came together. There were still moments of tension, moments when the humans and exiles looked at each other and wondered what the future would hold. But those moments grew fewer and fewer as the bonds between them grew stronger. Mark and Sarah, who had once been unsure of the exiles, now saw them as family. They worked side by side with them, sharing in the joys and hardships of life. Their children, too, had grown close to the exiles, learning from them, playing with them, and laughing together. The exiles, who had once been isolated and alone, now had people to care for and protect. It wasn't just the town that was changing. The exiles, too, were changing. They were no longer the outcasts they had once been. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming part of something bigger, a community, a family, a world that had accepted them for who they were. They had found their place in the universe, and for the first time, they felt like they truly belonged. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Creel stood on the edge of the town, looking out over the fields that stretched for miles. The wind blew gently through the trees and the air smelled fresh, full of life. He turned to Zomak, who was standing beside him, gazing at the same view. "It feels different now," Creel said, his voice thoughtful. "Before, we were always on the run, always looking over our shoulders. But now," Zomak grinned, his sharp teeth glinting in the fading light. "Now we have a place to stand, and we'll defend it with everything we have." Creel nodded. He had never imagined that one day he would find a place like this, a place where he could be free from the fear and uncertainty that had plagued him for so long. Earth wasn't just a new world. It was a new beginning. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the exiles and the humans continued to grow together. They celebrated their victories, mourned their losses, and worked side by side to create a future they could all share. The empire that had once rejected them was still out there, lurking in the shadows, but the exiles no longer feared it. With the strength of the humans at their side, they knew they could face whatever challenges the future held. They had found their home, and they would protect it with everything they had. For the first time in a long while, the exiles looked to the future with hope. They had been given a second chance, a new beginning, and they were determined to make the most of it.